What about their desire for how sweet they want things? I think I saw you talk about the difference between children and adults. Like kids needs X amount more tablespoons of sugar.
Oh yeah. So right, there's this amazing kind of think tank research center in Philadelphia called the Monell Center for Chemical Senses, they call it. They do a lot of work for the food industry, but they're independent, and their scientists don't hesitate to bite the hand that feeds them financially. And a scientist there has been sort of studying, kind of like when I first met her, she was kind of measuring the bliss point for kids. And again, she would kind of put kids through the drill of tasting, different puddings of various sweetness to figure out what level of sweetness they like. And she discovered that kids basically have a bliss point for sweetness that's about double what adults have. So they like, soda isn't even their ideal. It's soda with added sugar is their perfect amount of sweetness. But even she hasn't done sort of studies over time to see if kids like sugar more than they did like 50 years ago.
Yeah, no, that makes sense when you because I know children are much more averse to like bitter. Like when I was a kid, the taste of coffee was disgusting, and now as an adult, I like it. And probably because sweet in nature meant safe, right? So if you taste something sweet in nature, it's probably not bad for you. It's probably not poison. And so children being obviously smaller and more sensitive, or should I say maybe more vulnerable to toxins, they probably, it makes perfect sense that they would have a higher bliss point than adults.
Yeah, and that's why sort of non-calorie sweeteners are kind of so interesting and a little bit scary scientifically, right? Because sweet also probably meant calories to us in our evolutionary history. And we were always looking for calories, and so there may be some attraction to sweetness for that reason too.
What is your thoughts on artificial sweeteners? I know Sal brings up on the show studies around people that switch to Diet Coke. They actually don't necessarily lose any weight by doing that. So what do you know about
apparently
that?
The studies are kind of mixed on that. I mean, look, I figure if you have a client who's like struggling with soda, and that's like the one thing that trips them up, and they can eliminate that soda by switching to diet soda, and nothing else kind of goes haywire, then it's probably okay for them, right? That's probably like a good thing in that kind of context. I think what's troubling to some scientists is that because of our concern about all the sugar they're adding to so many products, a lot of these companies are now, again, marching through the store, reducing the sugar by adding no-calorie sweeteners, and sometimes cocktails, 2 or 3 of these substances, natural or not natural, where not only the studies are a little ambivalent about whether that's going to help you gain control of your eating habits or not, but it's also not kind of clear what that's doing to us kind of biologically. And there was this, I end salt, sugar, fat, and I refrain from writing about mice studies or animal studies because, as they go, we don't necessarily go. But there's this critter in the animal world called the fruit fly that's incredibly close to us in its eating habits, right? It loves fruit and it loves fermented things. It loves beer, right? And so scientists study the fruit fly for certain things, thinking that this is a pretty good guess on how humans might react. And these guys out of Australia did this very, very elegant experiment where they took some fruit flies with a control group, fed them their normal chow, but added, one of these non-caloric sweeteners. And the fruit flies went into like starvation mode. They couldn't sleep. They couldn't sit still. They were constantly eating, even though they were still getting their food and the same number of calories. And so the worry is that when we taste something sweet and the brain expects calories from that sweetness, the sugar, and the gut expects calories, and those calories don't come in, the brain may like overreact to that and tell us we're starving. And so conceivably, and the science is totally weak on this still, I wouldn't bank on anything like this, but conceivably one could be drinking diet soda and then feeling hungrier than you would otherwise.
Michael, that's exactly the experience that we've had training everyday people for over 2 decades. I've never had a client. The only times I've ever had anybody lose weight by consuming artificial sweeteners is when their diets were extremely controlled, when they knew exactly what their meals were. But everyone else, when they just tried to replace their soda with artificial sweetened, sodas, so they had, no more sugar from the soda, they ended up not losing weight because they made up for it with calories in other places.
Yeah, they may also kind of see like this placebo against, like, okay, I had my diet soda, now I can have the donut. It's not going to like affect me, or I've kind of made up for that. There's a scientist out of, I think, the University of Minnesota, Tracy Mann. She hates weight loss dieting. She wrote a book about it. And I was looking at it the other day, and one of the things she urges her clients to do, which I found really fascinating, and maybe a little counterintuitive, is like, don't eat healthy food because it's healthy for you. Find another way to value that food. Like, eat that salad because it has like lots of variety and textures to it, or eat that cucumber because you grew it in your garden. But if you call it healthy, that kind of sets you up for failure, because then you're going to be more apt to turn to that unhealthy thing as like a treat or as a reward, right, for eating the healthy thing, which really fascinating. I have no idea if that works for a lot of people.
Oh, it works. It works tremendously. We wrote a book around intuitive eating, and that's exactly.
Oh, fantastic!
This is exactly what we teach: is that you have to change the relationship that you have with healthy food by starting to make associations with things like, oh wow, when I eat these fruits and vegetables, I have better energy, my skin is better, my stool is better, and help the client connect to those things. And it actually, when you do a good job of this, you then start to actually crave those